My name is Detective Pierce. Most people know me as the man who finds answers where others see only shadows, the one who steps willingly into the darkness to drag out what lies beneath. I have solved murders in alleys, vanished children in deserts, horrors that hid in the folds of the earth and in the silence of ruined towns. But even I crave, at times, the illusion of peace. That is why, against my better judgment, I accepted the invitation. An old friend of mine, Samuel Harper, had written to me about a gathering in his family's village. A celebration, he said, a night of music, food, and friendship far from the suffocating streets of the city. "Come," he wrote. "No riddles, no corpses, no endless shadows, just laughter." It was enough to tempt me. Enough to make me ignore the quiet unease that always stirs when I leave the familiar paths of my work. The journey there was the first sign that I should have turned back. The train ended at a nameless station, its platform shrouded in mist so thick it seemed alive, curling around the lantern that swung in the damp air. A cart waited for me, its driver silent, his face hidden beneath a broad hat. He did not ask where I was going, did not greet me, only clicked his tongue and the horse moved forward, wheels crunching against the stones. The road was long and wordless. The silence of the forest pressed against me, unnatural, oppressive. No bird song, no rustle of life, only the sound of my own breath, the creak of leather, the faint rattle of the cart. The mist clung to the trees, pale and spectral, until even they seemed like waiting figures. When we reached the village, dusk had already fallen. Houses leaned with age, their windows glowing faintly with candlelight, their wood darkened by rain and time. Samuel stood waiting outside his family's house, smiling with warmth, though his eyes, yes, his eyes carried something else: fatigue, fear, a plea unspoken. Inside, there was life. Laughter, chatter, the music of a gramophone filling the air. Guests clinked glasses, clapped Samuel on the back, pulled me into the warmth of the evening. The table groaned with roasted meats, bread, wine, the bounty of celebration. And yet, the longer I stood among them, the less convincing it became. The laughter was too sharp, the music slightly off, as though stretched by invisible hands. The candles flickered strangely, as if stirred not by air but by something that wanted to be noticed. The cheer felt rehearsed, as though these people weren't celebrating but hiding, pretending. When Samuel raised his glass to toast, the room cheered louder than it needed to. His smile did not reach his eyes. They lingered on me again, pleading silently. Then the illusion broke. The gramophone sputtered mid-song, then fell silent. The candles guttered, all at once, plunging the room into blackness. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, nervous, sharp. And then, beneath our feet, the floor groaned, loud, heavy, as though something pressed up against it from below. A sound followed. Wet, guttural. Not from a man, not from any beast I knew. A sound like the ground itself had found a throat. Every head turned toward the back of the room, the old cellar door. Warped wood, rusted nails. Its frame quivered once, twice, as though something within was pushing against it. A woman screamed. A glass shattered. The gramophone wheezed to life on its own, spinning out the same song as before, but slower, deeper, distorted, like a funeral dirge. Samuel grabbed my arm, his hand trembling. His whisper cut through the murmurs. "Pierce, I didn't bring you here for a party. I brought you because it's happening again." The cellar door shuddered. Something on the other side pressed harder, and I realized then, the laughter, the music, the warmth of this gathering was all camouflage. These villagers weren't celebrating. They were waiting. And tonight the thing beneath the floor wanted to wake. The cellar door rattled again, harder this time, and every soul in that room seemed to hold their breath. The distorted song still groaned from the gramophone, stretching the silence into something unbearable. Samuel's grip on my arm was iron, but his eyes pleaded more than his words ever could. Then the noise stopped. The door, warped and trembling, fell still. The villagers exhaled in unison, like prisoners granted a temporary reprieve. But I had seen enough to know the truth. Something lived beneath that floor, something they had spent years hiding with false laughter and feigned celebration. And now, whatever it was restless. I slipped free from Samuel's grip and stepped toward the cellar. The villagers parted before me, their fear so thick it hung in the air like smoke. None dared follow. The wooden steps creaked under my weight as I descended, each one groaning as though warning me to turn back. The air grew damp, fetid, carrying with it a copper tang that reminded me of blood left too long in the open. At the base of the stairs stood a lantern, its flame sputtering as though it, too, resisted being down here. I lifted it, casting its glow across the cellar. The walls were lined with jars, hundreds of them, each one sealed with wax, filled not with vegetables or fruit but with black water, thick and swirling as though alive. In some jars I swore I saw pale shapes drifting inside. Fingers, eyes, fragments of things that should not exist apart from the whole. A low hum filled the cellar, almost inaudible, but it vibrated through my chest. The jars shivered in unison, their contents pressing against the glass as if eager to be freed. Then came the scratching. It rose not from the jars but from the far wall, where stone had crumbled to reveal a gap leading deeper underground. The sound was frantic, scraping, clawing. I raised the lantern higher. The light spilled into the crack, and for an instant I saw something retreat. Not a man, not an animal. A face that wasn't a face at all, skin stretched wrong, eyes like pits, a mouth too wide, lined with teeth that glittered in the flickering flame. I stepped back, the lantern shaking in my hand, and from above I heard Samuel's voice, trembling as it carried down the stairs. "Pierce," he whispered, "don't let it see your fear. That's how it chooses." The scratching stopped. Silence reigned again. I turned to the jars and froze. One of them had cracked, its black liquid spilling onto the stone floor, winding like veins, creeping toward my boots. From the crack in the wall, the humming rose again. Louder, sharper, now more like a chant. Words I didn't understand but that made my skin crawl, syllables that seemed to gnaw at the edges of sanity itself. And then, above me, the screams began. The villagers. The floorboards groaned, splintered. Something massive moved through the house, heavy and wet. The gramophone shrieked its broken song, twisting into a cacophony of laughter and screams played backward. I bolted up the stairs, lantern in hand, just in time to see the dining hall in chaos. Chairs overturned, candles toppled, villagers scattering. The cellar door behind me shuddered, splinters flying as though something was forcing its way out. Samuel clutched a poker from the fireplace, his face pale with terror but resolved with something else, a grim acceptance. He turned to me, shouting over the rising wail from beneath our feet. "This is why I called you. It wakes every 20 years. It takes what it wants unless it's stopped, but no one has ever stopped it." His words barely reached me over the thunderous crack as the cellar door split down the middle. From the darkness below, a hand, if it could be called that, emerged. Long skeletal fingers tipped with jagged nails, slick with something that glistened in the candlelight. They gripped the threshold and pulled. The villagers screamed. One fainted. Another ran for the door only to be pulled back by others. No one dared flee into the night. The thing was coming. And I understood with a clarity sharper than steel that the party had never been a celebration. It had been a gathering of witnesses. Witnesses to a cycle of horror, waiting for someone, anyone, to stand in its way. And this time that someone was me. The cellar door burst apart with a sound like thunder, wood and iron nails scattering across the floor. The thing emerged, dragging itself into the hall with a grotesque slowness, as though it wanted everyone present to see it, to despair before it struck. At first glance it resembled a man, tall, thin, long-limbed. But the more one looked, the more that illusion faltered. Its skin was mottled with darkness, wet and glistening as if it had been dredged from a river. Its head was elongated, the face stretched into a rictus that suggested neither smile nor snarl but something in between. Its mouth yawned wider than a human jaw should allow, filled with rows of jagged teeth that gleamed like shards of glass. The villagers shrank back against the walls, pressing themselves into the wood as though they could merge with it. One woman crossed herself repeatedly, whispering prayers that broke into sobs. A man dropped to his knees, muttering, "Not me, not me, not me," over and over, as though bargaining. The creature's eyes swept the room, not eyes in the true sense, but deep hollows filled with faint, pulsing light. They lingered on each villager one by one, drinking in their terror. When its gaze landed on me, it stopped. Samuel's words returned sharp as a knife. "Don't let it see your fear. That's how it chooses." I straightened my back, forced my breath to steady. The lantern in my hand shook, but I did not lower it. "You've made a mistake," I said, though my voice sounded thin against the rising hum that filled the room. "I don't scare so easily." The thing tilted its head, unnaturally sharp, bird-like. Its jaw opened wider, wider, until the skin cracked at the corners. A sound poured out, not a roar, not a scream, but a chorus. 100 voices shrieking, wailing, pleading, as though every victim it had ever claimed still lived within, their voices bound to its hunger. The room erupted into chaos. Villagers collapsed, clutching their ears, some bleeding from the noise. The gramophone spun madly, its needle carving scratches into the vinyl, joining the cacophony in a nightmarish harmony. And then the jars. Those jars in the cellar, they shattered all at once, the sound like 1,000 bells breaking. Black liquid surged up from the floorboards, rushing like veins through the cracks, slithering toward the creature. It fed on them, drinking in the darkness as the pulsing lights in its hollow eyes flared brighter. Samuel seized my arm. His face was pale, streaked with sweat, but his eyes were fierce. "Pierce, listen. It can't be killed, not the way you think, but it can be bound. That's what my grandfather did 20 years ago. That's why it still sleeps between cycles." "How?" I demanded. He pointed toward the fireplace. On the mantel lay an object I had not noticed before, a black iron symbol, twisted into a circle broken by jagged lines. Ancient, crude, but humming faintly with the same vibration I had felt below. The seal. It must be placed back into its chest while it's still feeding. That's the only way. The monster turned toward us, its impossible chorus drowning out all other sound. Its limbs stretched unnaturally, fingers raking across the ceiling beams, nails carving grooves into the wood. It moved with both grace and wrongness, as though gravity bent differently around it. I snatched the iron symbol from the mantel. The metal burned cold against my palm, biting into my skin like frost. The creature reacted instantly, its hollow gaze snapping to the object in my hand. It recoiled, shrieking louder, the voices in its maw rising into a fever pitch. It lunged. I dove aside as its hand struck the floor, splintering the boards where I had stood. Villagers screamed and scrambled. Samuel swung the fireplace poker, striking its arm, but the blow barely staggered it. The creature backhanded him across the room, slamming him into the table, sending dishes and glass flying. I clutched the seal tighter, crawling across the floor as the black liquid spread around me, thick and cold, trying to drag me down. Each drop that touched me whispered, voices in my ear, promising, pleading. "Let it in. Give it your fear. Be free." I grit my teeth, forced myself forward. The monster loomed above Samuel now, its maw opening, rows of glass teeth gleaming. He spat blood, but his eyes locked on me. "Now, Pierce," he roared. "Now, before it finishes." I surged to my feet, every muscle screaming, and charged. The seal pulsed in my hand, its jagged lines glowing faintly blue. The monster turned faster than any human should move, but too late. I slammed the seal against its chest. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then it shrieked. Its body convulsed, folding and twisting, limbs writhing like snakes. The voices in its maw screamed as one, a symphony of agony. The black liquid recoiled from me, sucked violently back into its form. The hollow lights in its eyes flared white-hot, then cracked like shattered glass. The seal burned brighter, searing into its chest, fusing into its flesh. Smoke poured from its mouth, its wounds, its eyes, filling the hall with the stench of sulfur and rot. The villagers fell silent, watching as the impossible horror thrashed, clawed at the floor, then finally collapsed into itself, folding like paper into a hole that wasn't there. And then silence. The floor was bare. No trace of the creature remained save the shattered door and the lingering smell of iron and ash. The seal lay on the floor, cold once more, its glow extinguished. I picked it up with trembling hands, staring at it. It looked so small now, so harmless. But I knew better. Samuel coughed, dragging himself upright with help from two villagers. His face was pale, bloodied, but alive. He met my eyes and gave a weak, tired nod. "It's done," he rasped. "For now, 20 years, maybe less, but you stopped it." The villagers looked at me with something like awe, something like fear. None thanked me. None dared. I slipped the seal into my coat pocket. I would not leave it here, not in this place where it had already failed once. If the thing ever rose again, I wanted to be the one to meet it. And as I stepped outside into the night, the mist still clinging to the trees, I could not shake the feeling that this village, this cursed cycle, was not the end. It was only the beginning.